Werewolf movies are notoriously bleak, and An American Werewolf in London is the gloomiest of them all. No justice, no happy ending, no hope whatsoever. In this video, I want to talk about David's guilt because of his cowardice during the werewolf attack that killed his friend Jack. Another theme I'll discuss is the film's answer of suicide to David's extreme guilt. But first, I want to explore the curse and its implications that it might reach farther than the tiny village of East Proctor.
There's something wrong with this place.
David and Jack are told several times to stay off the moors. Even the man who gives them a ride suggests they stay off the moors during the very first scene.
Boys, keep off the moors. Stick to the roads. The best of luck.
It's as if the moors, not the roads, are cursed. If someone walks on the road during a full moon, are they 100% safe from the werewolf? The advice seems to suggest so. It's the actual hills that are cursed, for whatever reason. In the small square of East Proctor is a statue of an angel with large wings, a crown atop his head, and is surrounded by a fence with small crosses. The statue is a prop for the movie, but it foreshadows the upcoming werewolf attack and a foreboding element that adds to the village's curse. The statue of the Greek god Eros in Piccadilly Circus is seen just before the last werewolf attack, bookending both deaths of each werewolf. It's as if wherever these statues are, the curse is present to force the werewolf to appear. When they enter the slaughtered lamb, David and Jack are greeted by a dozen or so bar patrons playing darts, chess, and enjoying their booze. Because the patrons know of the werewolf curse in East Proctor every full moon, they're likely all holing up in the bar for the night, drinking together, and knowing they're safe because the pentacle on the wall that protects them from the werewolf outside.
Excuse me! Well, what's that star on the wall for?
After a funny joke and an awkward mention of the pentacle, the two leave the slaughtered lamb. Before leaving, the patrons suggest they stick to the roads and keep off the moors, implying that probable danger awaits them if they venture off the road.
Wait! You just can't let them go?
Go. Stay on the road. Keep clear of the moors.
The bartender presses the patrons to get Jack and David back. They attempt to justify letting David and Jack go because of their overall reluctance to tell David and Jack of the curse.
Should the world know our business?
It's murder then.
Then murder it is. It's in God's hands now.
But you can tell there's an underlying level of remorse there for not telling them how dangerous it'll be for them. They understand that East Proctor has a curse, and that David and Jack will likely meet up with that curse very soon. When the doctor goes to the slaughtered lamb to investigate David's rants, he discovers that the people of the village believe they suffer from a curse. The curse of East Proctor, especially the surrounding moors, implies previous wrongdoings that were never avenged, and now the people of the village must deal with the consequences and live with their terrible guilt. They likely attend the slaughtered lamb not just for safety on a full moon, but to drink away whatever guilt that plagues them. Perhaps the curse of East Proctor even goes as far back as 200 years like the bartender said. If that's true, then that's generational guilt on a massive level.
Oh, what's that?
Oh, that's been there for 200 years. We were going to paint it out, but it's traditional, so we left it.
The depths of the curse even likely go into the police force, and perhaps higher. When the doctor speaks with Alex about the people of East Proctor, he mentions that the police have misplaced David's case file.
I tried to investigate the attack. There are no records. The case was closed. Now they've misplaced the file.
That suggests that Scotland Yard already knows about the curse of East Proctor and will bury any evidence that points to it. It implies that the curse might be political too.
God save the Queen!
I believe that you loved him very much and that somehow you blame yourself for his death.
The werewolf who attacked Jack and David is referred to as an escaped lunatic, someone who had spent time at an insane asylum and broke out. But when linked with the guilt theme, it not only implies that the man suffered from his own guilty conscience and is now wreaking havoc on the world, but that David will also be referred to as a lunatic when he dies. And there are several scenes where David calls himself crazy.
In time, I'm sure it'll all come back to you.
Doctor, my memory is fine. It's my sanity I'm beginning to worry about.
Then why the hell are you so quick to disbelieve me? You think I'm crazy?
I'm going completely crazy. I think I've lost my mind.
It was just me, Alex. Just me being crazy.
Do I seem crazy to you?
I've lost my mind.
I woke up in the zoo.
You know, I should be committed.
After all, when David dies, he returns to his human form, suggesting that his human form will be judged on his actions, not the werewolf form. When the doctor mentions that the people of East Proctor likely suffer from mass neurosis, the people who witnessed the werewolf in Piccadilly Circus will likely suffer the same psychosis, because David returns to human form when he died. And whereas the first attack passes on the werewolf curse to David, he doesn't pass it on to anyone. His curse is lifted because he fell in love. David mentions this to Alex after his second encounter with Jack. David and Alex discuss the Wolfman and ponder if the only way to cure the werewolf curse is to be killed by someone who loves him.
Did you ever see The Wolfman? Claude Rains is Lon Chaney's father, and he ends up killing him. Well, I think that a werewolf can only be killed by someone who loves him.
Just after he loses it in the city, he tells Alex that he loves her. It isn't until Alex professes her love to him that allows the werewolf curse to become stopped forever.
I love you, David.
Although American Werewolf is a tragic story, it suggests that finding love will end guilt. Now, I want to talk about the werewolf howl. It sounds so different from other werewolf howls. As I was writing this analysis, I realized that there's a bleak tone to the howl.
Listen. Do you hear it?
As original and scary as the howl is, I can't help but find the howl melancholy.
Beware the moon and stick to the road. Oops.
As if the werewolf is in pain and its howl expresses that pain. But it's not a physical pain. It's a psychological pain of despair. It's a suffering howl, crying for help because it hates the situation it's in. It doesn't have what it takes to kill itself, and therefore will forever hurt others. And if it doesn't die, it will eventually pass on its guilt to someone else.
What shall I do?
Suicide. You must take your own life.
David and Jack have been best friends since way back. Because of their tight friendship, or anyone's close friendship for that matter, it creates a certain responsibility to help the other when in need. They only have one another to rely on. They know this, and they even have an inside joke they both mention before they enter the slaughtered lamb in the small village of East Proctor. David, seemingly to be the leader of the two, playfully accepts that if anything bad does happen to them, he accepts responsibility.
But whatever happens, it's your fault. Right.
Of course, neither truly thinks anything terribly bad will happen to them, so David and Jack treat David's responsibility as a playful joke. By the way, the name of the pub, the Slaughtered Lamb, properly conveys Jack and David's upcoming situation with the werewolf. They are like lambs to the slaughter, naive and trusting of the dangers before them. David freaks out when he learns of the murders the next day. He tells Alex he loves her, and mentions that the whole situation is hopeless, which is a common theme in werewolf stories.
It's hopeless. Come on.
Let's go.
Leave me alone.
The werewolf tale is always hopeless because it's about dealing with an uncontrollable side to them. They know that when they change, they'll do evil things. But worse than the carnage they'll do each full moon is the anticipation of it. It's the lead up to the full moon that drives them crazy with fear. Their free will goes away during the full moon. They are fully aware that they'll eventually hurt people, and that fills them with anxiety and guilt because they don't want to do it, but they can't help it. This worry of the full moon also applies to the people of East Proctor. They dread each full moon, and are likely in a constant state of fear every day as the full moon approaches. The actual werewolf transformation is David's guilt manifesting itself into its physical form at its purest during the full moon. When normal, his guilt only comes in dreams and conversations with the undead, who encourage him to kill himself. David's reality is detached from his control during those moments, but otherwise he can deal with reality well enough. However, when the full moon appears, David's guilt takes over and consumes him to the point that he takes the lives of others. As a member of the undead, Jack visits David 3 times, trying to convince him to commit suicide. Each time, Jack is more decayed than the last, showing David that being one of the undead is a process that physically destroys you over time, just like how guilt destroys the mind of David. This is weird because it's no fault of the victims that they were killed by the werewolf. The story holds the victims responsible by letting them rot in limbo.
You've left my wife a widow, and my children fatherless. And I understand I am to walk the earth in limbo.
The victims were innocent. They don't deserve to suffer in limbo. It's like they were guilty by association simply because they just happened to cross paths with the werewolf. The victims are only present in the story to guilt-trip David and to reinforce the suicide option.
You You must die, David Kessler.
But David can't do it. He resists the notion to kill himself. As horrific as turning into a monster is every full moon, it's better than killing himself. He even put a knife to his wrist in the phone booth, but stops himself because he knows that it might be all in his mind.
I don't even know if it was me that killed those people last night. I don't remember doing it.
And why is it always that suicide is the only suggestion?
Take your life, David. Kill yourself. You've got to kill yourself, David, before it's too late. You've got to take your own life.
I will not accept this. Go away.
Suicide. You must take your own life.
What is about the act of killing oneself that's the best answer to rid the werewolf curse? Jack and the other victims never mention to get killed by someone else. They never suggest David being murdered as a possibility. Why is that? Because the murder of David would only bring guilt upon the murderer, and it would kickstart the guilt curse all over again. They suggest that the coherent, willful actions by David to commit suicide is the only way to end the curse, which is horrible and ironic because David didn't want to be a werewolf, and whenever he engages in his monstrous fury as a werewolf, it's always done against his free will. And we know that suicide isn't the only way for a werewolf to die because the werewolf at the beginning dies by gunshot wounds. But when it comes to David, suicide, the movie blatantly proposes, is the only way to get rid of the werewolf. You have to wonder, what if David didn't want to commit suicide? What if he managed to safely navigate his curse so he didn't hurt anyone during the full moon? Those options are totally out of the question in this movie, and are instead replaced with the overwhelming influence of suicide. It's because the entire film is one big critique on the importance of responsibility between lifelong best friends. American Werewolf suggests that best friends should always help one another, regardless of the situation, even if it means risking their lives, even if it means dying together. American Werewolf implies that leaving your best friend during his time of need might relieve yourself from responsibility, but it will haunt you forever until it consumes you with guilt, eventually hurting others because of that guilt, and then ultimately leaving you with only one insane option as a solution to stop it.